stakes are high and needs are more complex when running an established consumer products brand. You've got mounting pressures across multi-channel sales, complex supply chains, inventory across multiple warehouses, and leadership needs fast, accurate data to make decisions. That's why leading brands partner with Baker Tilly, an accounting firm that specializes in the consumer product space. Their team understands the unique challenges of scaling product-based businesses, whether it's navigating transactions confidently, sales tax compliance, integrating ERP systems like NetSuite, or predictive analytics. Baker Tilly delivers. Discover how Baker Tilly's industry-focused services can help elevate your business. Visit bakertilly.com.
Well, good morning, everybody. Thanks for letting us have the opportunity to sponsor this event. Some of you might be wondering, I don't know if you know much about me, and I hate to talk about me because that's not the most interesting part. But there is one thing that might be interesting, which is I'm a chief design officer at Domo. It's the fourth or fifth startup I've done. And so one of the things that's great about being in that situation is, yes, I've done the grind like many. I've learned to live with a lot of complexity, like I think many of you have learned to live with. But I've also been able to be at the front row of a lot of really interesting things happening in a lot of businesses. And one of them is, of course, AI. And I'm curious, how many of you are already engaged in AI projects at your organization? Some have dabbled. Okay. Has anyone feeling like they're in deep? They've become an expert at any of this? I'm seeing oh, you're in deep. Yeah, well, we're all in deep. Yeah, for sure. So I think one of the things that's interesting is that for many of us, it feels like AI is something that just kind of showed up a year or two ago, right? Actually, the underpinnings of AI, the actual math that's being run underneath the hood that allows you to chat with ChatGPT or get a product recommendation, those have been in the works for over the last 400 years. So in many ways, AI is one of those kinds of weird phenomenons that is either the start of a revolution or the end of one. We're never quite sure. So as a designer, I always look at problems in terms of, are they tame or are they wild? Many times we never ask this question. So why is this important? I think many times we think of problems as tame, that in some way or another, they've all been solved before in some kind of fashion. So what do? Well, we put some smart people, put them in a room, big whiteboard, give them some snacks, and say, figure it out. There are some problems that you don't figure out that way, right? There are some problems that don't already have best practices written down anywhere. AI is one of those problems. And generative AI is definitely one of those problems. And I think as leaders, it's important for us to understand that distinction, because if not, we're going to solve the wrong problem, right? So why is this generative AI different than AI that's come before? Does anyone have any thoughts or observations on that? What changed? I hate to call you out like that, but it's just before lunch. You're going to get up anyway, so you might as well start getting engaged. So the difference is this, is that all of the AI that we have used up until very recently has only done two things. It's either predicted something or it's classified something, right? Hot dog, not hot dog. Linear regression is a form of AI, right? Well, machine learning, which is underneath the big umbrella of AI. This is different. We now have AI that generates stuff, including knowledge. And it's already starting to have a pretty big impact. So this is the Shopify, Toby, the Shopify CEO, tweeted this 2 days ago. And to me, no matter how you feel about how he sort of wrote this internal memo and how this sort of mandate might be reacted to, I think it represents a really pivotal point, which is the idea that technology is going to start transforming organizations. Well, it's already doing it. So what Shopify is saying here is that we're an AI first company. And if we have a problem out there, we need to figure that out with AI as either a complete solution or a good part of that solution, or at least tell us why it's not. That's a pretty big ask, because as we just talked about a moment ago, we're not even sure what this stuff does yet. But the organizations that are starting to learn are the ones that are going to be ahead, right? And so what I wanted to give you was like, in 10 minutes, what are the 3 things that I think would be really important if I were sitting in your shoes or in your chairs, standing in your shoes? And again, because I'm lucky enough to work with some of the biggest retailers on the planet, the Fortune 50 and beyond, CPG, and then all across other industries, I've seen these 3 common keys to success. And I wish I could tell you like there's one product, there's one magic bullet that could solve it all. There is not. There is not. So you have to start simple. And you have to start simple, I think, with first principles. And one of the biggies is this. Because generative AI is so different, it allows us to do things that before were just not possible. I mean, I'm doing things every day with teams and other companies that 18 months ago, we couldn't do. Or if we did, it was going to be really expensive, really fragile, very difficult to maintain, and probably not very accurate. So what do we mean by an AI unlock? Generative AI, when used correctly through assistants and agents, and we're going to talk about that in a second, allows you to move from a world of tools to a world where you get stuff done, from tasks to goals. So, you ask somebody to go create a report on something, they have to break that question down into lots of little bits and pieces, and then turn that into lots of little tools, and then reassemble all of that. What we're seeing is generative AI used well reduces a lot of that complexity. So one other important point that I see confused a lot, and I think as leaders, these are things that can trip up teams and they can trip ourselves up, which is, what's the difference? You use a chatbot, it's an assistant, it's an agent. I don't understand why that's important to know. Well, it's important because the roles and how you describe and how you architect what you're going to be building and the problems you can solve are different. So we think of assistants as AI for you, right? It's the chatbot kind of thing. Agents, and this is where you're seeing a huge amount of effort and a lot of, obviously a lot of hype around, is where you actually create AI for your business, where you automate, where you create new kinds of content, where you create new forms of value creation from your data. Little animation to sort of show what that looks like. Another way of thinking of it is assistants are where you directly interact with AI, right? Now, assistants, by the way, are starting to get better. Assistants are actually starting to use agents, but you're still guiding it. You're still directing AI. Agents are where you figure out the agents you need, the data you need to give them, the instructions you need to give them. So it's really just 4 things. I tried to break it down into as simple a picture as possible. You give it those 4 things, and then it figures out what to do. Again, task-oriented to goal-oriented. Some of these things can start to get a little bit more complicated. So a lot of us want to create, better customer support experiences. Well, this in general is how that might look, right? You start with the basic 4 pieces, but then you start plugging in your data, you start plugging in your systems, you start plugging in your tools, you start plugging in your people. One of the things, the reason I have these little call-out boxes is I find with agents, and this is really strange. I mean, this is where you're in a wild problem space. With agents, you're not learning a new programming language. English is the new programming language, right? You're describing things. It's very strange, right? Again, things that we couldn't do 18 months ago, all of a sudden now we can do just by asking it. That's bizarre. So you have to think a little differently about that. Here's an example. One of the things we were putting together was a resume screener. So just go through, take a look at the resumes and try to score them. We're doing the same thing for customer support tickets. So like customer question comes in, let's figure out who should, respond to this. Let's figure out some of the customer history, see if we can put together a very personalized response. That's not a programming language in the sense we program, right? You're just writing a letter back. And then with those little pills, those are the parts where you can identify like what tools and what data has access to. So how do you start? Start simple with low risk. Tangible reward is probably going to seem like high reward. I like to think of it as start with problems that there are no wrong answers. And I know that sounds a little funny, but that's how I qualify low risk, right? So like if you're doing a summary for a report and it goes to the person internally, no one's going to get sued. It's not going to be a problem. But you have to learn how to learn, right? And so start with the simple things. And so the top use cases we're starting to see are definitely like customer service support. Many times, you want to sandbox some of those experiments. So you test them out and you see like, okay, is it working? But you also, and we'll talk about this in a second, you want to have person in the loop. Personalized recommendations and guidance, that's a biggie. We now have the ability with language to actually do this in a way that we've never done before. So dark secret, or maybe not dark secret, but it's secret nonetheless. As a designer, I feel like my whole life has been spent designing compromise, right? Like I have to create something that works for everybody. Well, now all of a sudden we have the tools that actually could work very well in a personalized manner for anyone, right? And then, of course, competitive intelligence and BI analysis. Many organizations, there's a gap in terms of language, translating an idea from one part of the organization to the other. Not everyone knows how to do that. I see that all the time. So here's like an example of one of our retail dashboards in Domo. And it's a combination of assistants and agents running behind the scenes, right? It's choose your own adventure. We don't know what the UI needs to be for this person, for this moment. Heather talking about the taxes. I was like, yeah, that changed over the weekend. Well, your business is changing pretty fast, right? So do you have the tools that are there and the observability to be able to know that what you're looking at is indeed happening? Bart, back to the translation. Sometimes the best chart isn't a chart. It's like a headline. Just tell me what to think about. Frame it for me, right? Second part, stay safe. So with, it's the old Spider-Man thing, right? With great power comes great responsibility. Same thing with tech. The best way to stay safe is keep humans in the loop, right? Humans, this is an idea of augmented intelligence that's been talked about for decades. It's actually happening. Augmented intelligence is let the machines do what the machines do well. Let the people do what they do well. People are great strategic thinkers. They have lots of other kinds of information that's not encoded anywhere, right? They have judgment, they have intuition, etc. Use those things. Be proactive in how you look at risk and how you start thinking about it, right? So along with human in the loop, governance and compliance, make sure your systems handle that, right? Because we have governance and compliance. We're familiar with that kind of thing, right? Like, okay, only I can look at this data set and you can look at that data set and we can both look at this other one. AIs can be quite a bit trickier, right? Like, how do you know what it's going to look at and what it's going to reveal, right? So guardrails. And then from a management perspective, thinking about how is your organization going to change? How are incentives going to change? How is accountability going to change? So in that note from Toby, right, that internal memo where he's like, it's AI everywhere. Well, there's some dangers to that, right? The dangers are, well, all of a sudden, have we changed the incentives so that it disrupts what we really are trying to achieve with our teams? Are we measuring people for how much they use a tool versus how well they get jobs done? And then finally, share what you learn. This means you have to move from being just like an organization that's comfortable working in the day-to-day to also becoming a learning organization. And the reason that's important is because you're going to be experimenting, right? You're going to be experimenting, and those experiments might be pretty exciting. But if no one shares what they've learned from that experiment, you haven't gained any advantage at all. One little caveat with this, I just wanted to call out, which is when you're experimenting, it can become pretty exciting. Like, wow, I put some stuff into this and then this popped out and all of a sudden we're really excited and we did a test. That's great. Turning that into a productized version is a whole different level. So you're going to have to learn how to do that as well. So taking a bit of a long view, which is difficult because why? Because there's a huge amount of hype. And everyone's like, it's like my kids on Instagram. It's like everyone's doing better than me. So we don't know if we're like ahead or we're too far behind at any given point. As an example, this is something we did with one of our partners to do predictive maintenance on fleets. This is an example of the kind of a jump you can make once you learn how to learn. We understand the problem. And like what we're doing is actually fairly sophisticated. In the lower part, that's Fourier analysis of, like vibrations happening in things. And then we put in the logistics so we can say, here's vehicles close to this other vehicle that we can put packages on. And here's the status of it. And here's an action plan. And then this part was kind of interesting when we were testing it, which is, see if I get to the last part of it. Oh yeah. Which is, how are people going to interact with agents? What's something familiar they can use? So we came up with this idea for, why not just an inbox? It's language. So now the agents, and they could be many agents, are just telling you like, how's it going? And what do you want us to do next? So I know that's quite a leap. I told you to say start simple. This is not simple. But we did this in less than a month. So it's possible. But it's possible because you're going to be learning cumulatively. So with that, I think you're under a lot of pressure. There's a lot of people out there who are trying to sell you a lot of solutions. I think the more that leaders and teams get into learning how to learn, they start experimenting. They're going to find the bespoke solutions that are going to give them that advantage. Don't outsource your strategy, right? Don't outsource your competitive advantage. So think about that. And with that, it's a technology, but it's also a strategy, right? You want to make sure that this is not just yet another tool you put on your stack. This is something you're going to use to transform your organization because it gives you the capability to do things that you just couldn't do before. And if you don't do it, guess what? Someone else is going to do it, right? So with that, I just want to say thanks. Again, very pleased to be a sponsor of this event, and I hope you guys are all having a great time. Feel free to reach out to me anytime you want. Thank you. Oh, yeah. So, by the way, shameless plug. I just got a Forbes this week on the death of the dashboard. We'll see what happens. See if that pans out. I don't think dashboard's ever really going to die, but we can hope.
Thank you so much, Chris.
In the fast-paced world of retail, technology can be a transformative force, reshaping the way businesses operate and consumers shop. Is your retail organization leveraging technology to its top capabilities? Evolving your technology capabilities can help enhance visibility into your business, decrease risk of increasing cybersecurity incidents, accelerate productivity with artificial intelligence, and more. Deeply immersed in the consumer products industry, Baker Tilly professionals bring customized solutions that can help you find the right technology fit. Visit bakertilly.com to learn more.